Hi, this is Eric from Longbox Review at longboxreview.wordpress.com, where I look at comics past and present. Today I'm going to be looking at Brave and the Bold number 35. This is an unscheduled audio cast. I was not going to do Brave and the Bold number 35 originally, but since it was a continuation of my examination of Brave and the Bold number 34, my very first audio cast, and Brave and the Bold number 35 also continues the story for number 34. I thought, well, that's kind of perfect, so let's get started. So the cover for Brave and the Bold number 35 shows us that the team up this issue is the Inferior Five and a Legion of Substitute Heroes, done by, again, Jesus Saiz. Where I praised Mr. Saiz for his cover from the last issue, I kind of have some complaints about this one, specifically the two figures in the front. So on the left of the cover we have the Inferior Five, and then on the right we have the Legion of Substitute Heroes. Now the two guys up front, Polar Boy and Merryman, they both look really, really old, especially Merryman. Now all these kids are supposed to be, in their teens, whether it's early, mid to late teens. You never know with these characters. But Merryman looks like he's 60, the way that he's drawn here. I think it has a lot to do with the lines on his face. Saiz draws Merryman with these lines going up his cheeks, and it just looks really old. And the glasses, I guess. I mean, Merryman wears glasses, but I don't know. These glasses make him look like he's, like I said, like he's 60. And Polar Boy looks like he's in his 50s. It's really strange because the other characters on the cover, they look, well, younger at least, if not teenager-ish. But these two just look really, really old. I know I keep going on about that, but it's a big mistake, I think, on either Saiz's part or the colorist. It might be a combination of the colorist too. It's hard to tell, and I'm not an artist, so I may be wrong about that. Otherwise, the cover looks really nice. It's actually, I hadn't noticed this before on number 34, but if you look at that cover, there are some black and gray figures in the background. So what I think we're seeing here is one side of the time bubble and the other side of the time bubble. Now it doesn't quite match up. If you compare the two covers, the way that the people are positioned and where they're positioned at, and it doesn't quite match up. But the idea is there that if you're looking through the time bubble, you're seeing the Legion of Superheroes on the other side when you're looking at the cover of number 35, and the other way around too for the cover of 34. You're seeing the Inferior Five and the Legion of Substitute Heroes. So I thought that was kind of cool that they did it like that. All right, let's get to the issue itself then. We open up with the Legion of Substitute Heroes in their cave headquarters. They're watching the news, where they receive the word that the Legion travel back in time to prevent the black hole from killing everyone. And then we have Chlorophyll Kid sitting there saying, if it never happened, how do we know that it actually did? They could just be making it all up, which I thought that was a really nice touch, considering all the time travel stuff. Any time travel character could basically pull that one. Oh yes, I travel back in time and I save the world, or I travel to the future and I save the world, whatever. You just got to take them at their word. So Fire Lad actually takes it a little too far and suggests that they go back in the past before the Legion and they save the world and become the famous heroes. So against all reason, which I would think Polar Boy at least would say something, make some objection, but apparently everyone just goes along with it. Polar Boy and Night Girl, which I always considered the kind of the cooler heads of that group. They sneak into Legion headquarters somehow and steal the time bubble, take it back in time. And here is where it gets interesting, because the odd time travel-y bits from issue 34 actually have their origin here in number 35. because there's a point in the issue where, in number 34, where the Legion go off to face the black hole, or to try and stop the black hole, and all of a sudden it's right by Earth, and that surprises Lightning Lad, especially since it was out by Saturn when he saw it. Well, the reason that happened was the Legion of Substitute Heroes, when they took the time bubble, they forgot to, as Night Girl says, they forgot to close the quantum gates behind them when they jumped, which allowed the black hole to jump forward in time. So that allows the black hole to actually destroy the Earth, and the subs say, well, we can fix it, right? And then we get, on the next page, we get a panel showing the Legion just having explained the situation to the Doom Patrol, and they're off to save the universe. And again, we get this nice little mirror where in issue 34, we see the group in the time bubble, and the way that everyone's positioned, you have Negative Man looking out the door towards the Chief, presumably, and then in issue 35, you see the opposite of that, looking over the Chief's shoulder, and he's looking at them in the time bubble, and you can see Negative Man looking out towards him. So I really like that aspect of issue 35, where you get these, like I say, these mirror images, or these the same points of view from a different perspective, I guess, or the same basic shot, and then you get it from a different perspective. So that was kind of neat. Like I said, they don't quite match up. Like I said, in 34 you see Negative Man looking out, and Saturn Girl is sort of looking out the door, but in 35 she's very clearly looking out there, so it doesn't quite line up, but it's still a neat idea. And then as soon as the Legion and the Doom Patrol leave, then you get this vroom sound, and the Chief looks with wide eyes at what has just happened, and, well, it's the subs having arrived, saying, "Hi, can we talk to the Doom Patrol?" And then, so that must be what the Chief was referring to in number 34 as, "This has probably been the worst day of my life." Except they don't really show why that was so bad, with one exception. The subs decide that we can go back in time, and they get to the Doom Patrol before the Legion does. Unfortunately, they end up doing that so many times, apparently, that there are multiple versions of the subs all saying, "Hi, can we talk to the Doom Patrol?" And there's just a ton of word balloons with that same exact wording. And the Chief is just sitting there looking on, powerless, I guess. So that must have been his reference to the worst day of his life. But that's it. There's nothing really else shown on that. Anyway, then the subs are off in the time stream, and there was this cute little thing where Night Girl says, "We're adrift in time, losing all points of coordination with true time, drifting into parallelism." And Chlorophyll Kid said, "I thought that was a literary device." And Firelad responds, "This isn't the time for that." That was pretty good. J. Michael Straczynski having a little bit of literary fun at the expense of the subs. But the subs do end up landing somewhere in time, and they land, presumably, at the headquarters of the Inferior Five. And this is where the fun and the absurdity of this comic really begins. So we get this 2-page shot of the subs in their time bubble, and then we have the rest of the Inferior Five. Now, if you're not familiar with the Inferior Five, they're a parody superhero team from the mid-'60s. I guess that pretty much covers it. They're just for laughs and puns, and that's about it. You don't really see them a whole lot in comics, but JMS did one of the San Diego Comic-Con panels did reveal that if he could do an ongoing with whatever characters he wanted to. He said he would do a comic with the Inferior Five, which would be interesting. But man, I would not want to read that. This little bit was more than enough to last me a while with the Inferior Five. So, but anyway, let's get back to it. So the subs meet the Inferior Five, and you get some comical moments where they, like I said, they introduce themselves when the subs ask them, and then you get this panel where Dumb Bunny, the female of the group, just stands there looking on, and everyone's looking at her, and it's because, well, she's the only one who hasn't answered that question. And she goes, "What was the question again?" And you have to, if you don't know, Dumb Bunny is blonde, so they really run with that whole, blondes is dumb gag. And then Fire Lad decides to try to explain the whole time travel thing. They're from the future, but they're going back to the past to save the future. And then there's this little black strip on the page that says 2 hours later, and the subs are just, all the other subs are just kind of sitting there or standing there. They're tired, they're exhausted, and they just want, I think the idea is, just shut up, Fire Lad. And mercifully, Night Girl says, finally, can we all just get in the time bubble and get on with this? So off they go. Off they go to fix the problem. Night Girl says, okay, at least we're going. Now all we have to do is to get to the black hole and use the Hawking theorem to, and then White Feather says, what's a Hawking theorem? Night Girl responds, does anybody here know what the Hawking theorem is and how it works? And someone replies, I thought you knew. We just assumed. Nobody said there was going to be a test, blah, blah, blah. So we get this little cute moment. And because no one knows what the Hawking theorem is, here's an example of a little bit of knowledge is dangerous. They decide to find Stephen Hawking to ask him about his theorem. Well, the problem is that they don't find Stephen Hawking, they find Stephen Balking. And Night Girl asks, well, why aren't you Stephen Hawking? Did the time flow change? And Balking replies, it would have cost too much to license his image. So they still ask him, can you explain the Hawking theorem to us? And then the next page, and the caption says 6 hours later, and he explains all of it. And says, that's how you can destroy it. It's really very simple. And Dumb Bunny goes, I get it. It's like putting the black hole on a diet. You eat less and exercise more, use up more energy than you take in. Night Girl snidely starts to say, that is, and Balking interrupts, absolutely correct. It is. Finally, off they go back into the time stream. Night Girl is piloting the time bubble and realizes it's very quiet, and she turns around and no one is in the time bubble with her. They're all down in the TARDIS-like lower levels of the time bubble. And they're all just talking around, or sitting around talking. Dumb Bunny is sitting on some piece of equipment, and Awkward Man bumps into her, and she falls down into this piece of machinery, and there's some electrical stuff going on, so she's shorting it out, and and she's stuck, so they're trying to get her out, and then finally do, and she goes, thanks, darn, I lost my tail in there. And so that explains, of course, the whole ball of fluff, the pink ball of fluff that Saturn Girl and Lightning Lad were giving Cosmic Boy a hard time about in number 34. So that explains that. But here the gag again, kind of like number 34, where the joke just goes on too long, or just it doesn't hit the right notes, and so it just sits there flat for me. This whole thing about Dumb Bunny falling into that machinery and losing her tail goes on for basically a page, which to me is kind of wasted space. Why did they put so much? Why did JMS put so much energy into examining that? It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Maybe there's another issue coming out that will explain all of this stuff. God, I hope not. But because of that, they realize that their time bubble is sort of broken. So what are they going to do? Well, they're going to go back into the past to where the Legion has gone to see the Doom Patrol, and while they're talking, the subs take the Legion's good time bubble, and then that's where we get again the little aside or joke or whatever you want to call it, where Saturn Girl said, "Wait, wasn't the time bubble on that side of the room?" And so that explains that little bit. And we get another or a recreation of those panels, like I mentioned earlier about the ball of pink and white fluff, and with Lightning Lad and Saturn Girl giving Kaz a bad time, which, like I said, it's kind of nice that they're kind of explaining this stuff from the previous issue, but at the same time, that's a lot of wasted space that I think we could have gotten ourselves without being hit over the head with it in number 35. And then they find the black hole. Night Girl is saying, "There it is." And then the blimp goes, "That's a whole lot of nothing." White Feather responds, "Or a whole, period, a lot of nothing." And the blimp says, "That's what I said." See, get it? It's a play on words. Whole. Anyway. But they discover that they've arrived at the same time that the Legion and Doom Patrol are already on the other side of the black hole, trying to destroy it. Fire Lad goes ballistic, takes over and says, "We can create a temporal wave that'll send them back toward Earth, that'll give us time to," and then, oops, well, then what he actually did was he brought the black hole towards Earth, and so it might be destroyed again. But then Dumb Bunny looks at it and says, "Hey, look, it's falling apart. They did it. The Legion saved the Earth." And you get the next panel is the Inferior 5 chanting, "The Legion saved the Earth, yay! The Legion saved the Earth, yay!" And then the other panel is the subs very quietly and annoyingly looking at them, and so they stop. The Inferior 5 stop. And Fire Lad says, "Well, we still have the time bubble. We could go back and try again." And Night Girl puts her foot down. "Nope, it's done. We're all done." And so the Inferior 5, or Merryman of the Inferior 5, says, "Just a wild idea, but why don't you take us with you to your future Earth? We could join your team." And Dumb Bunny goes, "Yeah, we work really well together, don't you think?" And then you get the subs looking very annoyed at her and the rest of the team. So they go back to Earth, drop them off, and leave. The problem is, you find out, when they left, it was 1972, and Merryman is looking at the paper, and it's 2010, 30 years in the future, and they have no way of getting home. And Dumb Bunny says, "We can't go home? Now where do we go? What do we do? Who will give us a home?" And then we get this other moment here where JMS is breaking the fourth wall, and all of the Inferior 5 look in this one panel, look at us, the reader, with these big, wide bunny eyes. You can almost hear the blink blink sound effect. That's not in the panel, but that's what I hear in my head. And then they walk off into their new future home, and as they do, Merryman says, "Well, we can always call Dan DiDio," but Dumb Bunny says, "Who?" Merryman says, "Never mind." Dumb Bunny again, "Okay." Pause. "I miss my tail." And Aquaman says, "We all do, Dumb Bunny. We all do." And that's the end of the issue. Not a great, again, not a really good issue of Brave and the Bold, but for what JMS was going for, the slapstick humor of it, the parody, the like I said, the breaking of the fourth wall, those kind of things. I kind of like those elements, but put together as a whole, as I wrote in my printed comments about this issue, which were very brief because I want to talk about stuff here. I don't care for the Legion of Substitute Heroes being depicted as the joke. Keith Giffen did it pretty effectively in the few specials he put out in I think the late 80s, maybe early 90s. And that's okay. Having these one-off things every once in a while, I guess, is all right. But in general, I just don't care for them to be depicted that way. I mean, they're already sort of a joke as is, right? The Legion of Substitute Heroes. Plus, later on in the Legion series, in the 90s and later, Polar Boy becomes part of the Legion. He sheds that immature, you're not worthy image and proves himself to be worthy of being part of the Legion. And then in the 5-year later run of the Legion, we find out that many of the subs have graduated, for lack of a better word, to be part of this resistance, and they're very effective in what they do. And they're no longer these failed superpowered teenagers. They actually contribute, and I guess I prefer to think of them in that way, as opposed to the butt of a joke. But here we are. You have the Inferior Five and the Legion of Substitute Heroes in Brave and the Bold number 35, and hopefully we don't see that again anytime soon. But for this issue, this particular instance, it was sort of funny, although not that much. So can you imagine if JMS actually did an Inferior 5 comic? I can't. I don't know what that would be besides a constant running gag that would get old very, very fast. But maybe he could pull it off. I don't know. Like I've said before, his Brave and the Bold stuff is hit or miss. So far, these last few issues have been sort of a miss. I would definitely borrow this particular issue if you aren't into buying it already. It's worth a few minutes of maybe a laugh or two if you're into this kind of thing. But otherwise, don't bother. And I don't know if I said this last time with number 34, but even if I did, it's worth repeating. Jesus Saiz, his issues with the cover aside, the guy he's a great superhero comic artist. He's got a really clean style. He should be working on a major book. I mean, not that I don't want to see him on this particular title, but he should be soon doing something else. He would be good on maybe Justice League. Better definitely than Mark Bagley and the inker that's on there right now. Yeah, he would be very good at a different team book. So DC ought to really put him on something else. But then I won't have him probably on this comic, and part of the appeal of this comic to me right now is Jesus Saiz's work. So anyway, that's my look at Brave and the Bold number 35, and sort of a re-examination of number 34 in some ways. Thanks for listening.